Good morning from the sunny Lake District. Today we are racing the Struggle, possibly one of the toughest hill climbs in Britain. It's 4.3 kilometres in length with an average gradient of 8.5%. But don't let that fool you, it's a proper fake news climb with gradients pitching up to 20% in places. However, on the flip side, you do get a couple of short descents to recover before the final brutal wall up to the finish line. It's definitely going to be one to employ a tactical pacing plan, which is why I think it is one of the toughest hill climb courses that we regularly race here in the UK. Right now, in the middle of September, we are deep into the UK hill climbing calendar with events coming thick and fast every single weekend. This year, to qualify for the Nationals, you need 3 opens on the board, hence why I've made a real priority to race this weekend, as I've got quite a lot of gravel races on as well, so I need to balance my calendar to make sure I've done enough open hill climbs to qualify for Nationals, which is fairly local to me this year. As always, today I am racing on my BMC hill climb machine that I documented the process building up for less than £1,000 at the end of last year. There have been a few upgrades since that video, for example my SRAM Red crankset, and I'm not really sure why I've still got it on there, but my L2 oversized pulley wheel system. To be honest with you, I don't think it offers me any gains, but also I haven't noticed any downsides. The shifting's still perfect, and if anything, it's allowed me to put a smaller chainring on without having to shorten my chain. So it's staying on my bike for now. Of course, I'm still running my trusty and cheap Elite Wheels Edge 40mm clinchers that weigh in at under 1,300 grams for some stupidly cheap price. I think they were about £300. All season, I've been really happy with how this bike's performing, but now we're deep into the proper serious race of the season. We'll have to see if it still holds up. Before we get racing though, I'm gonna make one slight change to my bike, and that is I'm gonna swap to a 36 tooth chainring. Currently got a 38 on the front, and to be honest with you, the chain line in the 30 on the back is not brilliant. Now, I think I will need that gear in the 38, but hopefully with the 36, I'll be in them extreme gears a bit less. That's the one downside of running a not really one by native chain set, is that the chain line is quite hard to dial in. So yeah, I'm gonna run the 36 for the Struggle. One of the perks of running the really cheap Wuezi chain rings is I have such a big stock of different sizes that I can just choose and tune my chain ring in for whatever event I'm doing. And not too much slack in the chain in the 11, so don't need to mess with the chain at least. Right, so let's discuss today's climb. It immediately ramps up as you leave Ambleside with a 14% wall. And this is a real key section. I'm going to be aiming for around 360, 370 watts here to really put a good hammer down at the start. But it is a very long climb, so I do need to be careful that I don't overcook it and not leave anything for the end. After that steep section, it does taper off to around 5 to 8% average for quite a while there. And this is where the climb becomes a bit of a rolling plateau even, with quite a significant descent where you can just tuck down and, to be honest with you, not put out many watts, which is really important because after this point, only one stretch remains, and that is the brutal final 300 meters with 20% gradients that this climb is famous for, and was home to the finale of the 2023 National Hill Climb Champ, where actually I wasn't racing then, I was stood at the side of the road cheering on the riders, and what a spectacle it was. That's pretty much why I wanted to get out here and race today. And for this section, the plan is simple. Just absolutely empty the tank, smashing it up that steep bit. That's where there's going to be big advantages to gain, because some riders will be absolutely dying there. And that's my plan, to really push it over the line there. What a beautiful morning for it. It does remind me how much I dislike the traffic in Ambleside though. Here we go. This is going to be fun. I've realised I've still got my leg warmers on, which wasn't ideal. But I've taken them off the start line.
10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
Kicking off the effort then, I instantly shot my watts well over target, pushing considerably above 400 watts off the line. Never a smart idea, but something I always do. However, the gradients were really steep here at the start, as you can see on the screen now, pushing well into the double digits, getting up towards 20% in places. As you can also see, the roads are pretty wet, so I was cautious about not standing up out the saddle too much in order to resist any spinning in my back wheel. I still can't get over how nice the conditions were on the course, how beautifully sunny it was after the absolute downpour we had the day before. A few minutes into the effort then, I am starting to grimace, but actually 360, 370 here did feel alright, even though I was getting out the saddle to spike it in places, trying to build in them micro recoveries whenever the gradients did taper off. Here's a prime example, dropping my watts just around the 340, 350 mark when the gradient was down below 10%. This was another section where I had to be careful. Yesterday's storm had washed loads of debris onto the road, and I know my High Road SL tyres are really puncture prone, so I was really trying to dodge any bits of rubbish on the road to avoid picking up a puncture. Now we got to the first proper flat / downhill section with a steep kick out of it, and I think this is where I made the biggest mistake of my entire race. Watch my watts as I kick up this section. I spiked well into the red, well over 450, which was an absolutely stupid play. I think I even hit 500 in places because I blew my legs up for the rest of the race. However, at this point I hadn't realised just how bad the headwind was going to be on the plateau, thinking, well, I've got that time to cruise and recover, but as we'll find out, it never came. On the final few ramps before the plateau then, I did manage to keep my power up in that sort of 360 zone that I was really aiming for, pushing up nearer 400 when it got steep. But then, when I hit the plateau, I realised I'd made a mistake because I was really fading at this point and there was such a strong headwind, which meant you really couldn't back the watts off and coast in the same way as I did in the past when I've ridden up here. So I did have to keep the power down and unfortunately could not recover anywhere near as well as I would have liked for the final ramp. I've also noticed my form lately, I'm not quite recovering as quickly as I have been in the past on these sort of sharp efforts when I can drop the watts a little bit. So it might be something I need to work on a bit more in future. Now it was time for the final wall. Look at those gradients, look at the watts I'm having to do just to keep my gears turning. My cadence is so low here and I'm in my lowest gear, but I was cracking so badly here. There were times where even though I was on a steep gradient, my watts were down in the 320s, 330s, and Kieran came absolutely flying past me, making me look like a complete amateur. Yes, he's normally on another level to me, but that was quite something when he passed me. These two guys gave me a bit of encouragement, but yeah, my legs were completely cooked. I just had to survive to the finish line. Fortunately, actually on reviewing this footage, my watts weren't as dire as I thought they were, and up through the screaming crowds, I'll leave you to watch the finish. Whoa, well that didn't quite go to plan. I was fading so bad at the end there. There was a proper headwind on the flat and downhill bits, which I hadn't really accounted for when I was pacing it. I went way too deep at the start and was grovelling. I think it was around 16 minutes. I'll have to wait and see for the results though. But yeah, brutal climb, especially them walls at the end. They really do take it out of you. At least the atmosphere up here at the top was really good. It's always a surreal feeling when you're absolutely fading, but there's people screaming at you to keep going. It's a novel experience, I just put it that way, and something you only get at these proper hill climbs. And there's nothing more Ambleside than getting stuck in a traffic jam back on the way back to HQ. I do maintain this is my least favourite road in the entire world. It is just horrific with the amount of traffic you get down here. Right, so now we're back home, I want to take a look at my results. If you look there, I did the climb in 16 minutes and 30 seconds. Good enough for 8th place on the day. So whilst it definitely wasn't my strongest performance ever, it wasn't a complete embarrassment either. And look at the winning time, you can see why Kieran absolutely flew past me on the climb. One nice takeaway from the ride though was I had a look on Strava and I've actually set my 10-minute power PB at 354 watts, which for my weight of 66 kilos when I weighed myself yesterday morning, really isn't too shabby at 5.36 watts per kilo. And I mean, that does show you just the level you've got to be at to be competitive in these hill climbs. It is a shame though that the climb wasn't only 10 minutes long and it did have quite a lot longer to go after that. My sort of plan was to go out with that sort of power for the first 10 minutes and then recover on the flat/downhill section around 2/3 of the way up the climb, ready to smash it up that wall. I used to be really good when you had them sort of small recoveries midway through a hill climb. I used to find that I could really recover and go again. However, I've noticed that recovery's not been as good lately, and it's probably something I need to start training again. And that headwind was brutal. If you look at all the flags at the finish line in the video, you'll see just how strong it was. It just meant that the parts where you could probably cruise along normally, not having to push more than maybe 250 watts, you were having to keep going at 300, and there probably was an advantage to pushing 350 still. So, you know, my plan to just rest up there wasn't good enough. Now, chatting to a few riders at the start, people were talking about a headwind, but you know, I was like, it's still quite a descent, it'll be fine. But no, they were right. It was pretty brutal. Having said that though, most of the competition above me were miles ahead. So I don't think slight differences in my pacing plan would have really bailed me out today. All in was a great effort, and actually, props to the organisers. The atmosphere at the finish was absolutely electric. And outside of the Nationals, that was probably one of the best organised hill climbs I've been to. You know, everything really on it, the timekeepers, people checking your bikes, people holding you up, people catching you at the finish. I definitely would have fallen over without them. You know, the whole setup was brilliant. Well, what's next on the channel then? Next weekend, I'm off to the Three Peaks Cyclocross, which is an absolute staple of my September. I've raced it every year for the past 3 or 4 years now. And you know, as much as it doesn't really suit someone who's not great technically like myself, absolutely love that race and the community around it. And what's even better is BC have now changed their regulations on cameras. So for the first time, I should be able to bring you all along with me for the Three Peaks and show you, especially if you've not raced it before, a little bit about what it's like, because that is a race like absolutely no other. So if you want to see what that's like, absolutely whack that subscribe button so you do not miss it. I am really excited to be able to film that one. Anyway, I better get myself recovered because I am absolutely exhausted now, and I'll see you all in the next one.